My name is Tessa Rowan, and at 29 years old, I hadn't spoken to my mother in 8 years when the text came through at 2 in the morning. Grandpa was gone, and I had to decide whether going back home was an act of courage or a terrible mistake. I thought I was just returning for a funeral, but the moment my mother's new husband blocked the doorway with that cold smile on his face, I realized my grandfather had left me more than memories. He'd left me a battle I never asked for. If you're watching this right now, drop your location in the comments below, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear more stories. The notification lit up my phone at 2 in the morning. I stared at it through bleary eyes, not quite processing the words at first. Then I read it again and my stomach dropped. Grandpa passed away yesterday evening. Funeral Friday.
Mom.
That was it.
No condolences. No explanation.
No acknowledgement that we hadn't spoken in over 8 years. Just the bare minimum information, delivered like a weather update. I sat in the darkness of my apartment, phone clutched in my hand, trying to remember how to breathe.
Grandpa.
The one person who never gave up on me, even when I'd walked away from everything and everyone else. The one who sent birthday cards with $20 bills tucked inside, who left rambling voicemails about his tomato garden and the neighbors' ridiculous disputes. The one who never once asked me to come back, never guilted me, never demanded explanations I couldn't give. And now he was gone. By 7 that morning, I'd booked the last available seat on a flight leaving at noon. The ticket cost more than my rent, but I didn't care. I threw clothes into a duffel bag without really looking at them, grabbed my toiletries, and was out the door before I could talk myself out of it. The airport was a blur of security lines and overpriced coffee. I sat at the gate, watching families reunite and business travelers tap away at laptops, feeling like I existed in a separate dimension from all of them. My phone buzzed periodically with work emails I ignored. Nothing mattered except getting there, seeing Grandpa one last time, even if it was only to say goodbye to a casket. As I waited to board, I scrolled through my voicemails. I'd saved every single one Grandpa had left me over the years.
Dozens of them.
I found the most recent one, left 3 weeks ago, and pressed play. His voice crackled through my earbuds, warm and familiar and alive. Tessa, sweetheart, it's Grandpa. Just checking in. The roses are blooming early this year. Real beauties. Listen, I wanted to tell you something. There was a pause, a shuffling sound. If anything happens to me, don't let them rush you. You hear me? Don't let anyone rush you into anything. You've got more people on your side than you think. The message ended there. I'd listened to it when he first left it, thought it was just him being his usual cautious self. Now, sitting in this sterile airport terminal, those words took on a different weight. Don't let them rush you. What did that mean? Rush me into what? The flight attendant called my boarding group. I gathered my things with shaking hands. The plane was packed, every middle seat filled with someone's elbow or oversized carry-on spillover. I wedged myself into 32B between a teenager with headphones turned up too loud and a businessman who immediately claimed both armrests. I didn't care. I pressed my forehead against the window and watched the ground fall away beneath us. Going back felt like a mistake. Every instinct I'd honed over 8 years of independence screamed at me to turn around, to stay away, to protect the life I'd carefully built from the wreckage I'd left behind. But Grandpa deserved better than my cowardice. He'd never abandoned me. I couldn't abandon him now, even if showing up meant facing everything I'd run from. I'd left at 18, 2 weeks after high school graduation. No dramatic exit, no shouting match, just a packed car and a note on the kitchen table.
I'm sorry.
I can't stay. The reasons were complicated, tangled up in things I still didn't fully understand or want to examine. My mother's coldness. The way home had started feeling like a trap instead of a sanctuary. The suffocating sense that if I didn't leave then I never would. Grandpa was the only one who stayed in touch. For the first year, my mother tried calling occasionally, her voicemails tight and angry. Then she stopped. I heard through Grandpa that she'd remarried, though he never said much about it. Just that things were different now, and I should focus on building my own life. So I did. I worked my way through community college, then transferred to a state university. got a decent job in marketing, rented a small apartment with a view of a parking lot, and thought that was success. I dated people who didn't ask too many questions about my family, made friends who knew me as Tessa Rowan, marketing coordinator, not Tessa Rowan, the girl who ran away from home. And I convinced myself I'd left the past behind. But the past doesn't stay buried. It waits. And eventually, it sends you a text message at 2 in the morning. The flight took 3 hours. I spent them staring out the window at clouds that looked like mountains, thinking about the last time I'd seen Grandpa in person. I'd been 17, sitting at his kitchen table while he made me hot chocolate with too many marshmallows. We talked about college applications and whether I should stay close to home or go somewhere new. He'd said something I'd never forgotten. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from what's killing you. At the time, I thought he was talking about bad relationships or dead-end jobs. Now I wondered if he'd meant something else entirely. We landed at 6 in the evening, the sun already sinking toward the horizon. The terminal was small, outdated, with flickering fluorescent lights and carpet that smelled faintly of mildew. Nothing had changed. Even the advertisements on the walls were the same ones I remembered from 8 years ago. I retrieved my duffel bag from baggage claim and stepped outside into humid air that clung to my skin like a memory. The taxi line was 3 people deep. I waited my turn, feeling more disconnected from reality with each passing minute. The cab that finally pulled up was driven by a man in his 50s with a weather-beaten face and a radio tuned to classic rock. He glanced at me in the rearview mirror as I gave him the address. Elmwood Street, he said. Nice area. You visiting family? Funeral, I said shortly.
Ah.
Sorry for your loss. He pulled away from the curb, merging into sparse traffic. After a moment, he added, Haven't seen you around before. I used to live here. Been gone a while. Elmwood Street, though. That's where the Hargrove place is. Big house, corner lot. That's the one. He nodded slowly, eyes flicking to me in the mirror again. Your mother remarried, didn't she? After your grandfather got sick. The question landed like a punch. She did. Fast, he said, and there was something in his tone that made me sit up straighter. Not judgment, exactly. More like observation. Statement of fact. How fast? I asked before I could stop myself. He shrugged, turning onto a familiar street lined with oak trees. Month, maybe 2 after he went into the hospital last spring. New guy moved right in. Real take-charge type, you know? Started changing things around. New fence, new paint job, new everything. My grandfather had gone into the hospital last spring. That was 9 months ago. I'd called him there, talked to him about his treatment plan. He'd been optimistic, said he'd be home in no time. And he had been, eventually. But apparently, while he was lying in a hospital bed fighting for his life, my mother had been getting remarried. She seemed happy? I asked. The driver's pause told me everything. I'm sure she's fine, he said diplomatically. We drove the rest of the way in silence. Streets I'd walked as a child rolled past the windows. The elementary school, where I'd learned to read. The park where I'd broken my arm falling off the monkey bars. The corner store where Grandpa used to buy me candy on Saturdays. Everything smaller than I remembered, shabbier, trapped in amber. When we turned onto Elmwood Street, my chest tightened. The houses here were older, set back from the road with wide porches and mature landscaping. I counted them as we passed. 3 more. 2 more. 1 more. And then there it was. Grandpa's house. Except it didn't look like Grandpa's house anymore. The driver was right. Someone had been making changes. The fence was new, tall, and imposing where there used to be a white picket. The paint was different, a cold gray instead of warm cream. The garden that Grandpa had tended religiously had been replaced with stark, minimalist landscaping. Even the porch swing was gone. This it? The driver asked, though he clearly knew the answer. Yeah. My voice came out rough. I paid him, added a tip, and grabbed my bag. As I stood on the sidewalk staring at the house, the porch light flicked on. It was full dark yet, the sky still holding onto the last blue of twilight, but someone inside had noticed my arrival. Someone had been watching. The front door opened. A figure stood backlit in the doorway, too far away to make out clearly, but the posture was unmistakable. Waiting. Watching.
Territorial.
I reached into my jacket pocket and felt the cool metal of Grandpa's watch. He'd mailed it to me 6 months ago with a note. "Keep this safe for me. I'll want it back someday." At the time, I'd thought it was just him being sentimental. Now I wondered if it had been something else. A safeguard. A message. I'd come here to bury my grandfather and pay my respects. I'd come here because it was the right thing to do, because walking away now would haunt me forever. But as I stood on that sidewalk, bag in hand and watch in my pocket, I realized something else. I'd walked into a situation that had been arranged, without my knowledge or consent. Whatever was waiting for me in that house, it wasn't grief or family or homecoming. It was something else entirely. I took a breath, squared my shoulders, and started up the walkway. The porch light seemed to grow brighter with each step, illuminating every crack in the concrete, every weed pushing through the edges. By the time I reached the steps, my heart was pounding hard enough that I could feel it in my throat. The figure in the doorway shifted, resolved into a person.
A man.
Not Grandpa, obviously. Someone else. Someone who looked at me like I was trespassing on property he owned. Behind him, in the shadows of the hallway, I could see my mother, smaller than I remembered.
Silent.
Watching. I climbed the steps, stood on the porch that used to be mine, met the man's eyes. "Hello," I said. He didn't move.
Didn't speak.
Just stared at me with an expression that somehow managed to be both cold and calculating. And that's when I knew. Whatever Grandpa had been trying to warn me about, whatever he tried to protect me from, I was standing right in front of it. My mother moved first, pushing past the man in the doorway. She looked older, thinner, her hair shorter than I remembered and threaded with gray. Her eyes met mine, and something flickered there. Surprise, maybe. Or fear. Definitely not welcome. "Tessa," she said. Just my name, flat and uncertain, like she wasn't sure I was real. "Mom." I shifted my duffel bag to my other shoulder. "I got your text. I didn't think you'd actually come." The words stung more than they should have. He was my grandfather. He was my father. Her voice had an edge to it now, defensive. "You didn't bother visiting him while he was alive." I bit back the response that wanted to come. That I'd called every week. That I'd sent cards and letters. That Grandpa had specifically told me not to come back, that it would make things harder. None of that would matter now. None of it would change the accusation in her eyes. The man stepped forward, placing himself between us. Up close, he was imposing. Mid-40s, maybe, with the kind of build that came from gym memberships and protein shakes. His hair was precisely cut, his jaw sharp, his clothes expensive and carefully casual. He looked like someone used to being in control, used to getting his way. "You must be Tessa," he said. His voice was smooth, practiced.
I'm Derek Mitchell.
"Your mother's husband." He didn't extend his hand. Neither did I. "I heard you got married," I said. "Congratulations. We would have invited you, but..." He shrugged, the gesture dismissive.
Well,
"You made your choices." "Derek," my mother said quietly. A warning or a plea. I couldn't tell which. He ignored her, his eyes still locked on mine. "I'm not sure what you're doing here, Tessa. The funeral is family only, and you haven't been family in a long time. I'm his granddaughter." A granddaughter who abandoned him, who broke his heart. Derek's voice was calm, reasonable, which somehow made the words worse. "He talked about you sometimes, you know. Wondered what he'd done wrong. Why you hated him so much that you'd just disappear." "That's not true," I said, my voice shaking now. "I never hated him. I called him every week." "Really?" Derek's smile was thin and cold.
Funny.
He never mentioned that. "Derek, please," my mother said. "She came for the funeral. Just let her." "Let her what, Jennifer? Waltz back in here like nothing happened? Pretend she gives a damn?" He turned to my mother, and I saw her flinch. Saw the way she made herself smaller in his presence. "Your father spent the last 8 years heartbroken because of her. She doesn't get to show up now and play the grieving granddaughter. Something cold and hard settled in my chest. This wasn't grief talking. This was something else. Something calculated. I'm not playing anything, I said. I loved my grandfather.
I came to say goodbye.
That's all. That's all, Derek repeated mockingly.
Right.
You came all this way just to say goodbye. Not because you heard about the will. Not because you think you're entitled to something. What will? I asked, genuinely confused. Don't, Derek said sharply. Don't pretend you don't know. Your grandfather changed everything before he died. Rewrote his entire estate plan. And I'm betting he told you all about it, didn't he? Probably promised you the house, the savings, everything he spent his life building. He didn't promise me anything. I didn't even know. You didn't know, Derek cut in.
Right.
You just happened to show up right after he died, completely unaware that he'd cut your mother out of the inheritance and put everything in your name. The words hung in the air between us. My mother made a small, wounded sound. I looked at her, saw tears tracking down her face, and suddenly nothing made sense. That's not possible, I said. Grandpa wouldn't. Wouldn't what? Screw over his own daughter for the granddaughter who abandoned him. Derek's laugh was ugly. Oh, he did. Made it very clear that he didn't trust Jennifer's judgment anymore. Didn't think she deserved what he'd built. He told me that himself, right before he died. Said family was about loyalty, and you were the only loyal one. Stop, my mother whispered. Derek, please stop. But he wasn't stopping. He was stepping closer, using his size to crowd me, to push me back toward the edge of the porch. I stood my ground, even though every instinct screamed at me to run. You don't belong here, Derek said quietly. You gave up your right to this family when you walked away. You gave up your right to this house. So I'm going to make this real simple for you, Tessa. Turn around, get back in a cab, and go back to wherever you've been hiding for the past 8 years. Because if you set one foot inside this house, if you try to claim anything that belongs to your mother, I will make your life a living hell. This is my grandfather's house, I said. I have every right. You have no rights. Derek's voice was steel now. You're a stranger. An intruder. And if you don't leave right now, I'll call the police and have you removed for trespassing. I looked past him to my mother.
Mom?
Is this really what you want? She opened her mouth.
Closed it.
Looked at Derek, then back at me, and said nothing. That silence was worse than any words could have been. Fine, I said. I'll leave, but I'm coming back for the funeral. You can't keep me from that. Watch me, Derek said. And then I made a choice. Maybe it was the exhaustion from the flight. Maybe it was the anger building in my chest. Maybe it was remembering Grandpa's voice on that voicemail, warning me not to let them rush me. Whatever the reason, instead of backing down, I stepped forward.
No, I said.
I'm not leaving. This is my grandfather's house, and I'm staying until after the funeral. You don't get to kick me out. For a second, Derek just stared at me. Then something changed in his expression. The mask of control slipped, revealing something uglier underneath. Wrong answer, he said. His fist came out of nowhere. I saw it at the last second, tried to turn away, but wasn't fast enough. The impact caught me on the left side of my face, snapping my head to the right and sending me stumbling backward. Pain exploded across my cheekbone and jaw. I tasted blood. I caught myself on the porch railing, vision swimming, ears ringing. Through the chaos, I heard my mother scream. Heard Derek say something I couldn't quite process. Felt the rough wood of the railing digging into my palms. When my vision cleared, Derek was standing over me, breathing hard. Not with exertion. With anger. With something that looked almost like satisfaction. You walked away from this family, he said, voice low and venomous. That means you forfeited your rights. All of them. The house, the money, the family name, everything. You're nobody here. You're nothing. And if you try to take what belongs to your mother, if you cause problems, I will destroy you. I straightened slowly, one hand pressed to my face. My cheekbone was already swelling, the skin hot and tender. Blood trickled from my split lip. But I didn't look away from him. You just assaulted me, I said. My voice was surprisingly steady. That's a crime. Derek smiled. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, you forced your way into a home where you're not welcome. You became aggressive when asked to leave. I defended my property and my wife. He gestured to my mother, who was standing frozen in the doorway, hands over her mouth. Isn't that right, Jennifer? My mother didn't respond, just stood there, trembling, tears streaming down her face. The police would love my version, Derek continued, especially considering your history. The daughter who abandoned her family, who everyone knows has problems. Who do you think they'll believe? I should have been terrified. Part of me was. But a larger part was suddenly, coldly calm. Because Derek had just made a massive mistake. He'd shown me exactly who he was. And he'd done it in a way that couldn't be undone. I pulled out my phone with my free hand. Derek tensed. What are you doing? Calling someone, I said. Because you're right about one thing. I did walk away from this family. But I'm not walking away from my grandfather's funeral. I met his eyes. And I'm definitely not walking away from whatever you're trying to hide. Put the phone down, Derek said.
No.
Jennifer, tell her. I'm not leaving, I said, cutting him off. You hit me. That's assault. And if you try to keep me from my grandfather's funeral, if you try to throw me out of this house, I'll press charges. I'll make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of man my mother married. Derek's face went red. You little. Derek. My mother's voice was barely a whisper, but it stopped him. Let her stay. Please. Just let her stay. Jennifer. She's right. You shouldn't have hit her. My mother's voice was shaking, but she kept going. She came for the funeral. She can stay until it's over. Then she can leave. Derek turned on her, and I saw my mother shrink back. Saw the fear in her eyes. And suddenly I understood so much more than I wanted to. This wasn't about inheritance or family conflict. This was about control. Derek had been controlling my mother, controlling the house, controlling the narrative. And now I'd walked in and disrupted everything. Fine, Derek said finally. His voice was cold, clipped. She can stay until the funeral. But not in the main house. She can use the guest room over the garage. And she doesn't touch anything. Doesn't go through your father's belongings. Doesn't interfere with the arrangements. Understood. He was looking at my mother, not me. Waiting for her to agree. Understood, my mother whispered. Derek turned back to me. The guest room is around back. The key's in the lockbox. Code is 5829. You've got until Saturday morning. Then you're gone. The funeral's Friday, I said. And you're staying through Friday night to avoid suspicion. Saturday morning, you're gone. That's the deal. It wasn't a deal. It was an ultimatum. But I nodded anyway.
Fine.
Derek stepped aside, gesturing mockingly toward the driveway. After you. I picked up my duffel bag, my face throbbing with every heartbeat. As I walked past my mother, she reached out like she might touch my arm. Then she dropped her hand. I'm sorry, she breathed. I didn't respond. Just kept walking around the side of the house, following the path to the detached garage. Behind me, I heard the front door slam. The guest room above the garage was small and impersonal, furnished with cast-offs and smelling faintly of mildew. I dropped my bag on the bed and stood in the middle of the room, shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. My phone was still in my hand. I pulled up the only number I'd saved from the old area code. It was a long shot. He might not even still practice here. But Grandpa had mentioned him in one of his letters, said he'd updated some paperwork. The phone rang 3 times. Then a voice I half remembered answered. Whitmore and Associates. This is Tessa Rowan, I said. I need to speak with Mr. Whitmore. It's about my grandfather, Harold Jensen's estate. I'm sorry, Mr. Whitmore isn't taking calls this evening. Tell him Tessa Rowan called. Tell him I'm at the house. Tell him something's wrong. There was a pause. Then, please hold. I held. Pressed a bag of frozen vegetables from the mini fridge to my face. Waited. The voice came back. Ms. Rowan? Mr. Whitmore says he'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't leave the property. I won't, I said. I hung up and sat down on the bed. 20 minutes. I could make it 20 minutes. I pulled Grandpa's watch from my pocket and turned it over in my hands. The back was engraved. Time tells all truths. I didn't know what that meant yet, but I had a feeling I was about to find out. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt Derek's fist connecting with my face. Every creak of the old building above the garage made me jump, certain he was coming back to finish what he started. By the time pale morning light crept through the curtains, I'd given up pretending. I got up, examined my face in the bathroom mirror, and winced. The bruise had bloomed overnight, a spectacular purple-black across my left cheekbone and jaw. My lip was swollen, the split still tender. No amount of makeup was going to hide this, which was fine. Let people see it. Let them wonder. The funeral was scheduled for 11. I showered in the cramped bathroom, dressed in the black dress and low heels I'd packed, and attempted to make myself look presentable. The result was jarring. Professional clothing, styled hair, and a face that looked like I'd gone 3 rounds with a boxer. At 9, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Whitmore will meet you at the funeral home at 10:30. Enter through the side door. I texted back. We'll be there. Another text came through immediately. Don't speak to anyone about last night. Documentation is being filed. I stared at that message for a long time. Documentation. Which meant Whitmore was taking this seriously. Which meant there was something to take seriously. I waited in the guest room until 10, then made my way down the external stairs. The main house loomed across the driveway, windows dark despite the morning sun. No sign of my mother or Derek. The yard was quiet except for birds and the distant sound of a lawnmower. I'd called for a cab last night after Whitmore left. It pulled up now right on schedule, and I climbed in without looking back at the house. The funeral home was on the edge of town, a converted Victorian with too much gingerbread trim, and a parking lot that always seemed half empty. I'd been here once before, for a friend's grandmother when I was 16. It looked exactly the same. The driver let me out at the front, but I walked around to the side as instructed. A plain door marked private stood slightly ajar. I slipped inside. The hallway was narrow and utilitarian, nothing like the carefully decorated public spaces. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Somewhere nearby, I could hear quiet voices. Ms. Rowan. I turned. Richard Whitmore stood in a doorway halfway down the hall. He was in his 60s, with silver hair and the kind of face that had probably been handsome 30 years ago. He wore a dark suit and carried a leather briefcase that looked older than I was. Mr. Whitmore, I said.
Please. Come in.
The room was small, probably meant for storage or private family consultations. A table, for chairs, no windows. Whitmore gestured for me to sit, then took the chair across from me. He set his briefcase on the table, but didn't open it. Let me see, he said quietly. I turned my face, so the bruise caught the light. Whitmore's expression didn't change, but something tightened around his eyes. When did this happen? Last night. Around 7:30, right after I arrived. And you're certain you want to proceed with this? What do you mean? Pressing charges. Making this public. Once we start down this road, there's no going back.
He paused.
Your mother will have to choose sides.
She already did, I said.
She chose him. Whitmore nodded slowly. Your grandfather was worried about this. That's why he took the precautions he did. What precautions? Instead of answering, Whitmore opened his briefcase and removed a file folder. He placed it on the table between us but kept his hand on it. Before we go any further, I need to explain something. Your grandfather came to see me 14 months ago. He said he was concerned about your mother's relationship with Derek Mitchell. He said he didn't trust Mr. Mitchell's intentions. He asked me to help him protect his assets and ensure that you would be taken care of in the event of his death. He left me the house, I said. Derek told me last night. Not exactly. Whitmore flipped open the folder, revealing documents I couldn't quite read from my angle. Your grandfather created a trust. The house, his savings, everything goes into the trust. You're named as the trustee and primary beneficiary. Your mother is the secondary beneficiary, but only under certain conditions. What conditions? That she not be under duress or undue influence at the time of your grandfather's death. That she be of sound mind and able to make her own financial decisions. And that any marriage she'd entered into be legitimate and free from coercion. The room felt very still.
He knew, I said.
He knew something was wrong. He suspected, Whitmore corrected. He couldn't prove anything, but he documented his concerns. And he built safeguards into his estate plan specifically to protect both of you. What kind of safeguards? Whitmore pulled out another document. If you're threatened, harmed, or coerced in any way regarding the estate, the entire trust activates immediately. Derek Mitchell is explicitly excluded from any benefit. Your mother's access to funds is contingent on her cooperation with an independent evaluation of her situation. You're saying Grandpa planned for someone to hurt me. I'm saying your grandfather was a very thorough man who loved his family and didn't trust Derek Mitchell as far as he could throw him. Whitmore's voice was gentle. He hoped he was wrong, but he prepared in case he wasn't. I sat back in my chair, trying to process this. The watch, I said suddenly. He sent me his watch 6 months ago. Told me to keep it safe. Did he? Whitmore's eyebrows rose. May I see it? I pulled the watch from my purse and handed it over. Whitmore examined it carefully, turning it over, running his fingers along the edges. Then he smiled. Very clever, he murmured. He pressed his thumbnail into a nearly invisible seam on the side of the watch. The back popped open, revealing not just the watch mechanism, but a tiny cavity. Inside was a small silver key. What's that for? Safe deposit box, if I had to guess. Your grandfather had one at First National Bank downtown. This would be the key. Whitmore carefully extracted it and placed it on the table. He left me the second key with instructions to give it to you after his death. But it sounds like he wanted you to have independent access.
Why?
Insurance, Whitmore said. In case something happened to me. Or in case there was any question about the legitimacy of his documents. He paused. Your grandfather was very specific that I should check that box before distributing any assets. He said there was additional documentation that might be relevant. What kind of documentation? He didn't tell me. Said I'd know it when I saw it. Whitmore collected the papers and the key, placing them back in his briefcase. Ms. Rowan, I need to ask you directly. Do you want to pursue charges against Derek Mitchell for last night's assault? I thought about my mother's face, her silence, her fear. I thought about Derek's confidence, his threats, the way he'd hit me with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done it before. Yes, I said. I want to pursue charges. Then I'll need you to go to the police station after the funeral and file a report. I'll accompany you. I've already documented your injuries photographically, and I'll be filing paperwork with the probate court this afternoon to freeze access to your grandfather's assets until this situation is resolved. Derek's going to lose his mind. Good, Whitmore said calmly. Let him. The more he reacts, the more he reveals. Your grandfather understood that. He knew that if Derek was playing a long game, pressure would make him slip up. A knock on the door interrupted us. A woman in a dark suit peeked in. Mr. Whitmore? The family is starting to arrive. Thank you. Whitmore stood, offering me his hand. Are you ready? I wasn't, but I stood anyway, accepting his hand and the steadiness it represented. One more thing, Whitmore said as we reached the door. Your grandfather left you a letter. I'm not supposed to give it to you until after the reading of the will, but under the circumstances. He reached into his briefcase and withdrew an envelope. My name was written across the front in Grandpa's distinctive handwriting. I took it with trembling fingers. He wanted you to know you weren't alone, Whitmore said quietly. Remember that today. The funeral was a performance. Derek played his role perfectly. The devoted stepson-in-law, standing beside my mother with his hand on her elbow, guiding her gently, dabbing his own eyes with a handkerchief at appropriate moments. He wore an expensive black suit and an expression of dignified grief. People shook his hand, murmured condolences, told him how wonderful it was that Harold had had family with him at the end. I stood in the back and watched it all with cold clarity. My mother looked smaller than ever, swallowed by her black dress and the weight of Derek's presence beside her.
She didn't look at me.
Not once. Just stared straight ahead while people filed past Grandpa's casket, while the minister talked about a man he'd clearly never met, while recorded hymns played through speakers that crackled on the high notes. The bruise on my face drew stares. Whispers rippled through the gathered crowd. I caught fragments of conversation, people speculating about what had happened.
A car accident. A fall.
Trouble, probably, given her history. Let them talk. The truth would come out soon enough. The service was mercifully short. The minister ran through the standard platitudes about life and death and resurrection. Someone read Psalm 23. A cousin I barely remembered gave a eulogy that focused mostly on Harold's service in the Korean War and his years working at the paper mill. Nothing about his garden. Nothing about his sense of humor or his loyalty, or the way he'd kept loving me even when I'd left. When it was over, Derek stood and announced that the burial would be private, immediate family only. He thanked everyone for coming and invited them to the house for a reception. There will be no discussion today, Derek added, his voice carrying easily across the room. Harold's affairs are being handled quietly, as he would have wanted. We ask that you respect the family's privacy during this difficult time. Translation: don't ask questions. Don't cause problems. Accept the narrative I'm building. People began filing out, heading to their cars for the drive to the cemetery. I stayed in my seat, watching Derek maneuver my mother toward the exit. He was smooth, I had to give him that. Never rushed, never obviously controlling, but always guiding, always in charge. Whitmore appeared at my elbow. The reception, he said quietly. Are you planning to attend? Should I? It might be instructive. See who shows up. See who avoids you. Everyone's going to avoid me. Look at my face. Exactly. Whitmore smiled slightly. Your presence is already making people uncomfortable. Derek spent the entire service trying not to look at you. He's worried. Good. We followed the procession to the cemetery, a sprawling place on a hill overlooking the town. Grandpa's plot was in the older section, near his wife's grave. The headstone was already in place, fresh and unmarked by weather. Someone had worked fast. The graveside service was brief. Just the minister, my mother, Derek, me, and Whitmore standing at a respectful distance. A few other relatives I didn't know well. We watched the casket lowered into the ground while the minister said words I didn't really hear. I thought about the last time I'd seen Grandpa. 8 years ago, sitting at his kitchen table. He'd hugged me goodbye, told me to be safe, told me he loved me. I'd promised to call. And I had. Every week, like clockwork, until 3 weeks ago when he'd left that final voicemail. Don't let them rush you. I pulled my coat tighter against the wind and watched the cemetery workers begin filling in the grave. Derek stood with his arm around my mother's shoulders, her face buried in his chest. The picture of a supportive husband. When it was done, everyone dispersed quickly. Derek guided my mother to their car, a sleek black SUV that probably cost more than I made in a year. He helped her inside, then turned to look at me across the rows of headstones. Even from that distance, I could feel the hostility rolling off him. Whitmore touched my arm. Come on. Let's get to the house before they do. Why? Because I want to see his face when he realizes I'm not leaving. The drive back took 15 minutes. Whitmore drove his own car, a sedate sedan that smelled like leather and old paper. We didn't talk. I spent the time staring out the window at the town I'd left behind, wondering what Grandpa had really known, what he'd really been protecting me from. Cars were already parked along Elmwood Street when we arrived. The house's front door stood open, people moving in and out carrying casserole dishes and flower arrangements. Derek's SUV was in the driveway, but I didn't see him or my mother anywhere. Stay close, Whitmore said as we climbed out. Don't let him separate you from me. Inside, the house was full of people I half recognized. Neighbors, distant relatives, people from the church Grandpa had attended. They clustered in the living room and kitchen, speaking in hushed tones, eating from paper plates laden with ham and potato salad. The house had been transformed. All of Grandpa's things were gone. His worn recliner, his bookshelves, his collection of National Geographic magazines dating back to the 60s. Replaced with modern furniture, abstract art, a flat-screen television mounted above a gas fireplace that used to be wood-burning. It didn't even smell the same. Grandpa's house had always smelled like coffee and newsprint and the lemon oil he used on the woodwork. Now it smelled like air freshener and new carpet.
Tessa.
I turned. My mother stood in the kitchen doorway, a glass of water in her shaking hands. She looked like she might collapse. Mom, you came. Of course I came. Your face. She took a step forward, then stopped, glancing nervously toward the stairs. Does it hurt? Yes.
I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. He didn't mean. Don't. I kept my voice low, conscious of the people around us. Don't make excuses for him. He's under a lot of stress. The hospital bills, the funeral costs, everything with Daddy's estate. That doesn't give him the right to hit me. I know. But Tessa, you don't understand.
Things are complicated right now.
If you could just… Jennifer. Derek appeared at the top of the stairs. He'd changed out of his funeral suit into khakis and a polo shirt, casual and relaxed in his own home. His eyes went immediately to Whitmore, and his expression hardened. Mr. Whitmore, I didn't realize you'd be attending the reception. I'm here as Ms. Rowan's attorney, Whitmore said calmly. I thought it appropriate to stay close given yesterday's events. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. People nearby stopped talking, sensing drama. Derek descended the stairs slowly, his eyes never leaving Whitmore's face. Yesterday's events were a private family matter that's been resolved. Has it? Whitmore's tone was mild. Because assault charges are a matter of public record. There are no charges, Derek said. Tessa and I had a misunderstanding. She'll tell you herself that it was blown out of proportion. Everyone was watching now. I could feel their eyes on me, on the bruise, on Derek's calm confidence. Actually, I said clearly, I'll be filing a police report this afternoon detailing how you punched me in the face when I tried to enter my grandfather's house. The room went dead silent. Derek's smile didn't waver. That's not what happened. It is exactly what happened. You hit me because I refused to leave.
You threatened me.
You told me I had no rights here. You were trespassing. She was visiting her grandfather's home, Whitmore interrupted. A home that is part of an estate in which she has significant legal standing. An estate that, as of this afternoon, is under the supervision of the probate court pending investigation of potential fraud. Derek's smile finally cracked. Fraud. Your rush to control Harold Jensen's assets, your attempts to intimidate his granddaughter, your questionable marriage to his daughter while he was hospitalized and vulnerable. All of it will be investigated thoroughly. This is insane, Derek said. But his voice had lost its confidence. Jennifer, tell them. Tell them this is crazy. My mother just stood there, frozen, water glass still clutched in her hands. Harold Jensen created a trust, Whitmore continued. That trust contains specific provisions regarding coercion, undue influence, and the protection of his heirs. By striking Ms. Rowan, you activated every single safeguard he put in place. That's not possible. I saw the will. It was simple, straightforward. You saw a will, Whitmore agreed. But not the whole picture. Harold was very careful to keep certain documents separate, protected, documented by multiple parties. Derek turned to me. You planned this. You and your grandfather planned this together. I didn't plan anything, I said. I just came home for a funeral. You're the one who decided to hit me. Because you were taking everything. Everything he worked for, everything that should go to Jennifer, and you were just going to walk in and take it all. I wasn't taking anything, I said. But I am now. Derek lunged forward. Whitmore stepped between us, and suddenly there were other men there too, people from the funeral I hadn't paid attention to. They formed a quiet barrier, not threatening, just present. I think it's time for you to leave, Mr. Mitchell, one of them said. I recognized him now. Tom Preston, Grandpa's former neighbor. This is my house, Derek said. Actually, Whitmore said, pulling a document from his briefcase. According to the deed I filed with the county this morning, this house belongs to the Harold Jensen Trust. You're a guest here at best. At worst, you're trespassing. Derek's face went red, then white. You can't do this. It's already done. Harold's wishes were very clear. The house passes to the trust immediately upon his death. Ms. Rowan, as trustee, has full authority over the property pending final settlement of the estate. I watched Derek's world collapse in real time. The confidence, the control, the carefully constructed life he'd built. All of it crumbling because he'd made one mistake. He'd shown his true nature too soon. If you touch her again, Whitmore said quietly, if you threaten her, if you come near her, you lose everything.
Today. Right now.
That's the deal Harold set up. That's what happens next. Derek looked at my mother. Jennifer, say something. But she was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face, and I realized she already knew. She'd known what Derek was. She'd just been too afraid to admit it. The front door opened. 2 police officers stepped inside. We got a call about a disturbance, one of them said. Derek's expression went blank.
No disturbance.
Just a funeral reception. Actually, I said, I need to file a report about an assault that occurred last night. The officer looked at my face, at Derek, at the crowd of witnesses. Ma'am, would you like to come down to the station? Yes, I said. I would. As I followed the officers out, I heard Derek start to shout. Heard Whitmore's calm voice cutting through the chaos. Heard my mother's sobs. But I didn't look back. I was done looking back. It was time to look forward. And for the first time in 8 years, the future looked like justice. The police station smelled like burnt coffee and industrial cleaner. I sat in a gray interview room with walls the color of old concrete, giving my statement to Detective Sarah Chin while Whitmore sat beside me, occasionally interjecting legal clarifications. I showed her the bruises, described exactly what had happened. The taxi driver's comments, Derek's threats, the punch, my mother's silence. All of it documented, photographed, recorded. We'll need to speak with your mother, Detective Chin said when I finished. Get her statement. She won't contradict him, I said. She's terrified of him. We still need to try. Chin closed her notebook. Mr. Whitmore, I understand you have additional information relevant to this case?
Ido.
Whitmore opened his briefcase. But I think Ms. Rowan should hear it first. May we have a moment? Chin nodded and stepped out. The door clicked shut, leaving us alone in the fluorescent-lit room. There's something else your grandfather documented, Whitmore said quietly. Something I discovered when I reviewed his files more carefully this morning. It's about your mother's marriage. What about it? The timeline doesn't add up. Your grandfather was hospitalized in March of last year. Your mother married Derek in early May. But Harold was released from the hospital in mid-April and lived at home until his death 3 weeks ago. So, Derek moved in while Grandpa was sick? More than that. Whitmore pulled out a folder. Your grandfather started keeping detailed notes in a journal during his final months. He documented dates, conversations, observations. He was particularly concerned about the circumstances of your mother's marriage. He slid several photocopied pages across the table. Grandpa's handwriting, shaky but legible, filled each page with dated entries. April 28th. Derek pressured Jennifer to sign papers today. She was crying. He told her it was for hospital billing to protect the house from medical debt. She signed without reading. May 2nd. Jennifer told me she and Derek got married at courthouse. She seemed confused about it. Said it happened fast. Said Derek handled everything. May 15th. Found document on Derek's desk. Post-nuptial agreement. Jennifer's signature on it. She told me yesterday she never signed a post-nup. Doesn't know what that is. The entries went on. Page after page of Grandpa's growing concern, his careful documentation, his attempts to protect my mother from something he couldn't quite name. He thought the marriage might not be legitimate, Whitmore said. Or, at least that your mother didn't fully understand what she was agreeing to. He consulted with me about it 6 months ago, but we couldn't find proof of coercion without your mother's cooperation. She won't cooperate. She's too scared. Maybe. Whitmore pulled out another document. But this morning, I did some additional research. The post-nuptial agreement Derek had your mother sign is deeply problematic. It essentially gives him control of all assets acquired during the marriage, including anything your mother might inherit. It also includes clauses about property division that are unusually one-sided. Is that legal? In some circumstances, yes. But not when signed under duress or without proper legal representation. Your mother didn't have a lawyer present. She didn't have time to review the document. And according to your grandfather's notes, Derek explicitly misrepresented what she was signing. So, the post-nup is invalid? Potentially. But there's more. Whitmore hesitated. Your grandfather's notes reference other incidents. Verbal intimidation. Isolation from friends. Derek monitoring your mother's phone calls. Classic patterns of coercive control. The pieces clicked together in my mind. Derek hadn't just married my mother for access to Grandpa's estate. He'd been systematically trapping her, making sure she couldn't leave, couldn't question him, couldn't protect herself. Grandpa knew, I said. That's why he changed everything. That's why he built in all those safeguards.
Yes.
He knew that if something happened to him, Derek would move quickly to secure control. So he made sure that couldn't happen. He put you in charge of the trust specifically because you were outside Derek's reach. But Mom gets nothing? Your mother gets everything eventually. But only after an independent evaluation confirms she's free from coercion and able to make her own decisions. Your grandfather wanted to protect her, not punish her. I stared at the photocopied pages, at Grandpa's careful handwriting, at the evidence of how much he'd cared, how hard he'd tried to save us both. Derek's going to fight this, I said. He already is. Whitmore checked his phone. I've received 3 calls from his attorney in the last hour. They're threatening to file an emergency injunction, claiming you're mentally unstable and trying to defraud your mother. Of course they are. Which is why we need to move quickly. Detective Chun is going to interview your mother this afternoon. While that's happening, I need you to come with me to the bank. We need to see what's in that safe deposit box.
Now. Right now.
Before Derek realizes it exists. We left the police station through a side exit. Whitmore drove us to First National Bank, a brick building downtown with marble floors and chandeliers that had probably been installed in the 1920s. The safe deposit box vault was in the basement, accessed through a gate that required 2 keys. The bank manager, a woman named Patricia Reynolds who'd apparently known Grandpa for 40 years, let us down. She used her master key while I used the key from the watch. The box slid out smoothly. It was larger than I'd expected, maybe 2 feet long and a foot deep. Heavy. Whitmore carried it to a private viewing room while Patricia discreetly withdrew. Ready? Whitmore asked. I nodded. He opened the box. Inside were documents. Dozens of them, carefully organized in labeled folders. Bank statements showing large withdrawals from Grandpa's accounts, withdrawals he hadn't authorized. Loan applications with forged signatures. Property deeds that had been altered. Emails between Derek and various financial institutions, printed and highlighted. My God, Whitmore breathed. He documented everything. There was more. A flash drive labeled security footage. A folder marked hospital coercion, audio recordings. Another labeled Jennifer's statements before Derek. And at the bottom, a sealed envelope addressed to me. I opened it with shaking hands. Dear Tessa, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you everything while I was alive. I was trying to protect you and your mother both, and I wasn't sure I could do that if you came back too soon. Derek Mitchell is not who he claims to be. I've documented as much as I could, but I know it won't be enough by itself. You're going to need to be strong. You're going to need to fight. Your mother is going to need you to fight for her, even if she can't fight for herself. I put everything in your hands because I trust you. Because you got out once, which means you're strong enough to come back. Because you're the only one Derek can't control. Don't let him win. Don't let fear make you walk away. And please, when this is over, help your mother remember who she was before he took that from her. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry I left you with this burden.
Grandpa.
I read it twice, then folded it carefully and put it in my purse. Whitmore was going through the other documents, his expression growing grimmer with each page. This is criminal, he said. Not just civil fraud. Criminal fraud. Elder abuse.
Forgery.
Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. He looked up at me. Your grandfather built a case against Derek. A complete, thorough, damning case. Why didn't he just go to the police himself? Because he needed Derek to act first. He needed Derek to reveal himself. Whitmore gathered the documents. Your grandfather was brilliant. He set a trap, and Derek walked right into it. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Detective Chen. Your mother just admitted Derek pressured her into signing documents she didn't understand. She's asking to speak with you. I showed Whitmore. He nodded.
Go.
I'll get this evidence to the detective and start filing the necessary paperwork. This changes everything. What happens now?
Now.
Whitmore smiled grimly. Now Derek Mitchell's entire world collapses. My mother was in interview room B, a mirror image of the one I'd been in earlier. She sat hunched in her chair, tissue clutched in her hands, eyes red from crying. When I walked in, she looked up with an expression of such raw hope and fear that my heart clenched. Tessa. I sat down across from her. Mom.
I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. I should have stopped him. I should have protected you. Why didn't you? She crumpled. Because I was scared. Because he told me if I didn't cooperate, he'd take everything. The house, the savings, everything Daddy left. He showed me papers, said they proved I'd signed away my rights. I didn't know what to do. Did you sign papers without reading them?
Yes.
He said they were for the hospital, for Daddy's care. He said if I didn't sign, they'd put a lien on the house. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. He made everything sound so urgent, so necessary. And I was so tired, Tessa. Daddy was dying, and I couldn't think straight, and Derek just kept pushing and pushing. Did he hurt you? She didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, not the way he hurt you.
But yes.
In other ways. Detective Chen entered with a notepad. Ms. Rowan, I need to ask some follow-up questions. Tessa, you're welcome to stay if your mother wants you here. Mom reached across the table and grabbed my hand.
Stay.
Please. I stayed. For the next hour, Detective Chen walked my mother through everything. The rushed marriage. The documents she'd signed. The post-nuptial agreement she didn't understand. Derek's increasing control over finances, phone calls, social interactions. The isolation. The intimidation. The threats. It painted a picture of systematic abuse, and with every answer, my mother seemed to shrink further into herself. He said he loved me, she whispered at one point. He said he wanted to take care of me and Daddy. He was so attentive at first, so helpful. I thought he was a blessing. When did that change?
Chen asked.
After Daddy came home from the hospital. Derek started making decisions without asking me. Started telling me what I could and couldn't do. When I questioned him, he'd say I was too emotional, too stressed to think clearly. That I should trust him. She looked at me. When you left all those years ago, I was so angry at you. But part of me understood. Part of me wished I could leave too. Why didn't you tell Grandpa? I tried. But Derek was always there. Always listening. And Daddy was so sick. I didn't want to burden him. She wiped her eyes. I didn't know he was documenting everything. I didn't know he was trying to save me. Detective Chen closed her notebook. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm going to recommend that you speak with a domestic violence counselor. What you've described is a pattern of coercive control. That's a crime in this state. But I married him voluntarily. Did you? Chen's voice was gentle. Because from what you've told me, Derek Mitchell manipulated you into a marriage you didn't fully understand while you were vulnerable and your father was dying. That's not consent. That's exploitation. My phone buzzed again. Whitmore. Derek's attorney just filed for emergency injunction. Claims you're using undue influence to turn your mother against him. Hearing scheduled for Monday morning. I showed my mother the text. Her face went pale. He's not going to let this go, she said. He's going to fight. Let him fight, I said. We have evidence. We have Grandpa's documentation. We have your testimony. He'll say I'm lying. He'll say you coached me. He can say whatever he wants. The truth is going to come out. But even as I said it, I felt a flicker of doubt. Derek had resources, connections, a lawyer who clearly knew how to work the system. And we had papers and testimony and a dead man's journals. Would it be enough? Over the next 3 days, Derek launched a full counterattack. His attorney filed motions questioning Grandpa's mental competency at the time he created the trust. They produced witnesses who claimed I'd been planning to contest the will for months. They subpoenaed my phone records, my bank statements, my employment history, looking for anything that might paint me as unstable or opportunistic. The local newspaper ran a story. Granddaughter returns after years absent. Family disputes estate. The article was carefully neutral, but the implication was clear. I was the outsider causing problems. My mother received dozens of calls from people Derek had cultivated. Friends, neighbors, church members. All of them expressing concern about her judgment, suggesting she was making a mistake, warning her that she'd lose everything if she didn't stand by her husband. Some of them worked. Mom called me Friday night, crying. Maybe we should drop this, she said. Maybe Derek's right. Maybe we're overreacting. Mom, he hit me. He forged Grandpa's signature on loan documents. He manipulated you into a marriage you didn't understand. That's not overreacting. But what if I lose the house? What if I end up with nothing? You won't. Grandpa made sure of that. The trust protects you. Only if Derek doesn't prove it's invalid. His lawyer says they have experts who'll testify Daddy wasn't competent. That he was paranoid and delusional at the end. He wasn't. How do you know? You weren't here. The accusation stung because it was true. I hadn't been here. I'd left, and in leaving, I'd left my mother vulnerable to someone like Derek. I know because of his letters, I said. Because of his phone calls. Because everything he documented is turning out to be true. That's not paranoia, Mom. That's careful observation. She was quiet for a long moment.
I'm scared, Tessa.
I know. I am too. What if we can't prove it? What if Derek wins? Then we fight harder. But we don't give up. Grandpa didn't give up on us. We can't give up on him. Saturday morning, Whitmore called. We have a problem. Derek's threatening to file assault charges against you. Against me? For what? He claims you attacked him at the funeral reception. That you became violent when asked to leave. He has 3 witnesses willing to testify. That's insane. I was with you the entire time. I never touched him. I know. But he's trying to muddy the waters. Make this look like mutual combat instead of domestic violence. Will it work? Not if we move first. Detective Chun is recommending charges against Derek based on your mother's testimony and the evidence we found. But we need your mother to hold firm. If she recants, everything falls apart. I drove to the house Sunday afternoon. My mother met me at the door, looking exhausted and 10 years older than she had a week ago. Derek's staying at a hotel, she said. The protective order Chin filed keeps him away from the property. It's so quiet without him. Is that good or bad? I don't know anymore. She led me to the living room, the one Derek had redecorated to erase all traces of Grandpa. I keep expecting him to walk in. Keep expecting him to tell me what to do. It's strange, not having that. That's the control talking, Mom. That's what he trained you to feel. I know. The counselor explained it. Coercive control, learned helplessness, all the psychological terms. She sank onto the couch. But knowing the words doesn't make the feeling go away. It will. Eventually. What if it doesn't? What if I'm too broken to fix? You're not broken. You're surviving. There's a difference. My mother looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time since I'd come home. You survived leaving.
How?
I ran away. That's not exactly admirable. But you built a life. You became someone.
How?
I thought about the answer. I decided I was worth saving. Even when I didn't believe it, I acted like I believed it. And eventually, the acting became real. I don't know if I can do that. You already are. You're talking to the police. You're working with a counselor. You're sitting in this house without Derek for the first time in over a year. That's all survival, Mom. That's all strength. She started crying again, but differently this time. Not hopeless tears. Something else. Something that might eventually become healing. Derek's lawyer called this morning, she said. Offered me a settlement. If I testify that Daddy was incompetent, if I support Derek's version of events, he'll make sure I keep the house and half the estate. And if you don't, he says they'll prove I'm an unfit beneficiary, that I'll end up with nothing. What are you going to do? My mother wiped her eyes. I'm going to tell the truth. Whatever happens, I'm done lying for him. Monday morning arrived cold and gray, promising rain. Whitmore picked me up at 7, both of us dressed for battle in dark suits and determined expressions. My mother met us at the courthouse, flanked by her counselor and Detective Chun. The hearing was held in a windowless courtroom with wood paneling and harsh fluorescent lights. Judge Margaret Holloway presided, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a reputation for not tolerating nonsense. Derek sat at the defendant's table with his attorney, Marcus Brennan, a partner at one of the state's largest firms. Derek wore an expensive suit and an expression of wounded dignity. When my mother entered, he tried to catch her eye. She looked straight ahead. Your Honor, Brennan began, standing. This emergency hearing is about protecting a vulnerable widow from exploitation by a granddaughter who abandoned the family years ago and only returned after learning about a substantial inheritance. My client, Derek Mitchell, has been a devoted husband and caretaker. The allegations against him are baseless and motivated by greed. Mr. Whitmore? Judge Holloway looked at Grandpa's attorney. Your response. Whitmore stood. Your Honor, this hearing is about elder abuse, fraud, and domestic violence. Derek Mitchell systematically manipulated Jennifer Mitchell into a marriage she didn't fully understand, coerced her into signing documents that gave him control of her father's estate, and physically assaulted his stepdaughter when she attempted to attend her grandfather's funeral. We have extensive documentation to support these claims. I'd like to see this documentation. For the next 2 hours, Whitmore walked the judge through everything. Grandpa's journals, the forged loan applications, the post-nuptial agreement signed under duress, the security footage, bank records showing suspicious transfers, my mother's testimony about coercive control. Brennan objected repeatedly, claiming the evidence was tainted, that Grandpa had been mentally incompetent, that my mother was being coached. You claim Harold Jensen was incompetent, Judge Holloway said at one point. Do you have medical evidence to support that? We have testimony from family friends who noticed confusion and memory problems, Brennan said. I'd like to hear from Mr. Jensen's physician. Dr. Patricia Yamamoto took the stand. She was in her 50s, professional and precise. I treated Harold Jensen for the last 15 years of his life. He had heart disease and arthritis, but his cognitive function remained excellent until his death. We conducted regular evaluations because he was concerned about remaining independent. His most recent assessment, completed 2 months before his death, showed normal cognitive function for his age. Did he show signs of paranoia or delusion?
No.
He was appropriately concerned about family matters, but his thinking was clear and rational. In your medical opinion, was Harold Jensen competent to create a trust and make estate planning decisions? Absolutely. Brennan's face tightened. Dr. Yamamoto, isn't it true that you were a personal friend of Mr. Jensen's? That your objectivity might be compromised? I was his physician for 15 years. That's not friendship. That's medical care. And my evaluations were thorough and professional. The judge made a note. Continue, Mr. Whitmore. I'd like to call Jennifer Mitchell to the stand. My mother walked to the witness box on trembling legs. She was sworn in, sat down, and folded her hands in her lap. Derek stared at her with an expression I couldn't quite read.
Pleading?
Threatening?
Both.
Mrs. Mitchell, Whitmore said gently, can you describe the circumstances of your marriage to Derek Mitchell? She took a breath. I met Derek at the hospital when my father was admitted for heart failure. He was visiting someone else, started talking to me in the cafeteria. He was very kind, very understanding. He started visiting regularly, bringing me coffee, sitting with me when I was upset. When did the relationship become romantic? It happened fast. Maybe too fast. Derek said we shouldn't waste time, that life was short. He proposed 3 weeks after we met, while Daddy was still in the hospital. How did you feel about that? Overwhelmed. But he was so insistent, and I was so tired. I said yes because it seemed easier than saying no. Tell us about the wedding. We went to the courthouse. Derek handled everything. The license, the ceremony, everything. It was just us and 2 witnesses Derek brought. I didn't invite anyone. Derek said it should be private, that we'd have a real ceremony later. Did you ever have that ceremony?
No.
What happened after the wedding? Derek moved into my father's house. He said it made sense, that he could help take care of Daddy. At first, it was fine. But then he started making decisions without consulting me. Handling Daddy's bills, rearranging the house, telling me what I could and couldn't do. Tell the court about the post-nuptial agreement. Derek brought home papers a week after the wedding. He said they were for insurance purposes, to protect the house from medical debt. I was confused, asked if I should have a lawyer look at them. He got angry, said I didn't trust him, that if I really loved him, I'd just sign. Did you sign?
Yes. He stood over me while I did.
Wouldn't let me read it first. Did you understand what you were signing?
No.
I didn't even know it was called a post-nuptial agreement until Mr. Whitmore explained it to me. Brennan stood. Objection. This is hearsay about Mrs. Mitchell's state of mind. There's no evidence of coercion. Overruled, Judge Holloway said. I'll allow it. Whitmore continued. Did Derek's behavior change after you signed the document?
Yes.
He became more controlling. Monitored my phone calls. Asked where I was going whenever I left the house. Got angry if I talked to friends. Told me people were trying to take advantage of me, that I should only trust him. Did you witness any conflicts between Derek and your father?
Yes.
Daddy questioned some of Derek's financial decisions. Asked to see paperwork. Derek got very defensive, said Daddy was paranoid and shouldn't worry about things he didn't understand. They argued several times toward the end. Did your father express concerns about Derek to you?
He tried.
But Derek was always around, always listening. Daddy started writing me notes instead, little pieces of paper he'd slip into my pocket, telling me to be careful, to trust Mr. Whitmore, to remember that I had options. Do you still have these notes?
No.
Derek found them and threw them away. Said Daddy was trying to turn me against him. Whitmore paused. Mrs. Mitchell, why are you testifying today? Why tell us all this? My mother's voice broke. Because my father spent his final months trying to protect me, and I didn't listen. Because Derek hurt my daughter. Because I can't keep living this lie. She looked directly at Derek. Because I'm done being afraid. Brennan's cross-examination was brutal. He painted my mother as unstable, easily influenced, unreliable. Suggested she was testifying against Derek to get access to the inheritance. Implied she was mentally fragile and couldn't be trusted. But my mother held firm. Answered every question calmly. Didn't waver. I'd like to call Tessa Rowan, Whitmore said when my mother stepped down. My turn. I walked to the stand, was sworn in, sat down, looked at Derek and didn't flinch. Whitmore kept his question simple. What happened when I arrived at the house? What Derek said. What he did. The punch. The threats. Everything clinical and factual. When Brennan cross-examined me, he focused on my estrangement from the family. Suggested I was lying to gain access to Grandpa's money. Pointed out that I'd left and never looked back. Is it true you had no contact with your mother for 8 years? He asked. Yes. Seems odd that you'd suddenly care so much about her welfare now. I never stopped caring about her. I stopped being able to help her. There's a difference. Or maybe you stopped caring about anyone but yourself. If I only cared about myself, I would have stayed away. Coming back has been nothing but painful. Painful or profitable? Objection, Whitmore said sharply. Sustained. Judge Holloway looked at Brennan. Counselor, get to your point. Brennan tried a few more angles, but I told the truth, and the truth didn't change no matter how he twisted the questions. "I'd like to play the security footage," Whitmore said when I stepped down. The bailiff dimmed the lights. A screen lowered, and there, in grainy black and white, was Derek punching me. The angle was from a neighbor's camera, pointed at their own front door, but catching the edge of Grandpa's porch. You could see everything. The conversation. Derek blocking the door.
Me trying to step inside.
His fist connecting with my face. My mother's horrified expression in the doorway. The judge watched it twice. So did everyone else in the courtroom. When the lights came back up, Derek's face was white. "Mr. Brennan," Judge Holloway said quietly, "does your client have anything to say about this footage?" Brennan conferred with Derek in whispers. Then, "Your Honor, my client admits there was a physical altercation, but maintains it was in defense of his property." "His property?" The judge's eyebrows rose. "Mr. Mitchell, this court has reviewed the trust documents, the property deeds, and the relevant statutes. At no point was that house your property. At no point did you have the right to physically prevent Ms. Rowan from entering. She was trespassing. She was not. And even if she were, assault is not an appropriate response." Judge Holloway looked at the file in front of her. "I've heard enough. Here is my ruling. The protective order against Derek Mitchell remains in place and is extended indefinitely. Mr. Mitchell is barred from the property at 324 Elmwood Street and from any contact with Jennifer Mitchell or Tessa Rowan except through legal representatives." "Your Honor," Brennan started. "I'm not finished. The Harold Jensen Trust is valid. I find no evidence of incompetence or undue influence in its creation. Tessa Rowan is confirmed as trustee with full authority to manage the estate. All assets currently held by Derek Mitchell that originated from Harold Jensen's estate are to be frozen pending a full audit." Derek half stood. "You can't. Sit down, Mr. Mitchell." The judge's voice was ice. "You're lucky I'm not holding you in contempt. Additionally, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for investigation of fraud, forgery, and elder abuse. Mr. Mitchell, you should retain criminal counsel." "This is ridiculous," Derek said. "This is a family matter, not criminal. You forged documents. You coerced a vulnerable woman into marriage during her father's final illness. You assaulted your stepdaughter on camera. Those are crimes, Mr. Mitchell. And this court takes them very seriously." Two uniformed officers stood from the back of the courtroom. They approached Derek slowly. "Derek Mitchell," one of them said, "we have a warrant for your arrest. Please stand and place your hands behind your back." "This is insane," Derek said, but he was shaking now. "Jennifer, tell them. Tell them this is all a misunderstanding." My mother looked at him from across the courtroom. "No," she said quietly. "It's not a misunderstanding. It's the truth." They cuffed him, read him his rights, led him out of the courtroom while he shouted about wrongful prosecution and conspiracy and lawyers. The door closed behind him. Silence settled over the room. "Ms. Rowan," Judge Holloway said, "I trust you'll manage your grandfather's estate responsibly." "I will, Your Honor." "And, Mrs. Mitchell, I encourage you to continue working with your counselor. You've been through a traumatic experience. Healing takes time." "Thank you, Your Honor." The gavel fell. The hearing ended. And for the first time since I'd gotten that text at 2 a.m, I felt like I could breathe. The house felt different when Derek was gone. Lighter somehow. Even with all his furniture and modern decor still in place, even with his presence still echoing in the paint colors and the new fence, something fundamental had shifted. My mother and I stood in the living room 3 days after the hearing, looking at the space Derek had remade. "We should change it back," Mom said. "Put Daddy's things back the way they were." "Most of his things are in storage," I said. "Derek rented a unit across town. Can we get them?"
"Yeah."
"Whitmore's handling the paperwork. The storage unit is part of the estate, paid for with Grandpa's money. Everything Derek took belongs to us." "Us," Mom repeated. "That's going to take some getting used to." "What is?" "Having someone on my side again." I squeezed her hand. "You've always had someone on your side. You just couldn't see it." Over the next weeks, we slowly transformed the house back into itself. Retrieved Grandpa's furniture from storage. Stripped off Derek's gray paint and returned the walls to their original cream. Replanted the garden with roses and tomatoes. Hung the old photographs Derek had taken down. The trust lawyer walked us through the finances. Derek had managed to siphon off about $40,000 through fake loans and forged withdrawals, but the bulk of Grandpa's estate remained intact. The house, free and clear. Modest savings. An old life insurance policy. Nothing spectacular, but enough for my mother to live comfortably. The house is yours, I told Mom one evening as we worked on the garden. Once the trust settles, you'll have full ownership. I thought you were the trustee. I am. But the trust was always meant to benefit you. Grandpa just wanted to make sure you were protected first.
What about you?
Don't you want anything? I thought about it. I want you to be safe. I want you to be happy. That's what I want.
Tessa.
Mom set down her trowel. You came back.
You fought for me.
You deserve something for that. I have something. I have you back. I have the knowledge that Grandpa trusted me. That's enough. But apparently, Grandpa had thought otherwise. When Whitmore came by the next week, he brought another envelope.
This is for you, he said.
A letter your grandfather instructed me to give you after the estate settled. I opened it at the kitchen table while Mom and Whitmore watched. Dear Tessa, by now you know most of it. The trust, the documentation, my concerns about Derek. But there's one more thing I want you to know. I never blamed you for leaving. I understood it, even if your mother didn't. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from what's hurting you. You did that. You survived. You built a life. But survival isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning. And now you've come full circle. You've come back, not because you had to, but because it was right. You've fought for your mother. You've honored my memory. You've proven that leaving didn't mean forgetting. I've instructed Mr. Whitmore to transfer $50,000 to you from the estate. That's separate from the trust, separate from your mother's inheritance. It's yours, free and clear. Use it however you want. Start a business. Go back to school.
Take a trip.
Or don't use it at all. Just know that it's there because you earned it. Because you're my granddaughter, and I'm proud of you. The watch was my father's. He gave it to me when I came home from Korea. Now I'm giving it to you. Time tells all truths, Tessa. And the truth is that you're stronger than you know, braver than you think, and loved more than you realize. Don't lose that. Don't forget it. And please, take care of your mother. She's going to need you.
All my love, Grandpa.
I read it 3 times before I could speak. He left me money. $50,000, Whitmore confirmed. It's being held in a separate account. You can access it whenever you're ready. I don't need it. Give it to Mom. Tessa, Mom said softly.
Take it.
Daddy wanted you to have it. But
take it, please.
You've put your life on hold for weeks to help me. You've lost work. You've been hurt. You deserve this. I looked at the letter again. At Grandpa's handwriting. At his final gift.
Okay, I said.
I'll take it. Derek's trial was scheduled for the fall. Fraud, elder abuse, assault. The district attorney was confident about conviction given the evidence. Derek had hired a new attorney, a criminal defense specialist who was already making noise about plea deals. He wants to avoid prison, Whitmore told us. He's offering to return all the money he took, sign away any claim to your mother's property, and accept probation. No, Mom said immediately. No plea deal. He goes to trial. Are you sure? Trials are difficult. You'll have to testify again. I'm sure. He needs to face what he did. I was proud of her for that. For choosing accountability over convenience. The watch sat on my dresser in the guest room, gleaming in the afternoon light. I'd had it repaired at a jeweler downtown, the same one Grandpa had used. The man behind the counter had remembered him. Harold Jensen, he'd said, smiling. Good man. Always came in on Tuesdays. Said it was good luck. He never mentioned that. He was superstitious that way. Not about big things, just little habits. Tuesday for the jeweler, Thursday for the hardware store, Saturday for the barber. Did he ever talk about his family? All the time. Especially you. Said his granddaughter was brave. Said you'd go far. I'd left the shop with tears in my eyes and the watch ticking steadily in its new leather band. Time tells all truths. Summer came slowly to the house on Elmwood Street. The roses bloomed the way Grandpa had always promised they would. The tomatoes grew heavy on their vines. The porch swing was rehung, and Mom spent evenings there with a book and a glass of iced tea. I stayed longer than I'd planned, worked remotely when I could, took leave when I couldn't. My apartment back home felt distant and unimportant. My old life felt like something that belonged to someone else. You should go back, Mom said one evening. Get back to your real life. This is my real life too. You know what I mean. Your job, your friends, your apartment. You've been here almost 2 months. Do you want me to leave?
No.
She smiled. But I don't want you to stay out of obligation either. I'm okay now, Tessa.
I'm healing.
You don't have to watch over me anymore. What if I want to? Then visit. Often. But don't put your life on hold for mine. She was right. I knew she was right. But leaving felt like abandonment all over again. I'll come back, I said. Every month. We'll have standing dinner dates. I'd like that. I left on a Tuesday morning, my car packed with the few things I'd brought, and the watch in my pocket. Mom stood on the porch and waved as I pulled away. She looked smaller, older, but also stronger somehow. Like she was remembering who she'd been before Derek. The drive back to my apartment took 4 hours. I spent them thinking about Grandpa, about his careful planning and his enduring love, about how he'd protected us both even after death, about how sometimes the hardest thing to do is accept help, accept love, accept that you're worth fighting for. My apartment felt strange when I got back. Too small, too impersonal. But it was mine, and that mattered. I unpacked, started responding to work emails, began putting my life back together. The watch sat on my nightstand. Every morning, I wound it. Every evening, I checked the time against my phone. It never lost a second. Time tells all truths. Derek pleaded guilty in September to avoid trial. Fraud, elder abuse, assault. He got 3 years in prison, 5 years probation, and a permanent restraining order. Mom testified at his sentencing hearing, told the judge exactly what he'd done to her and to our family. The judge listened. Then he added an extra year to the sentence. You preyed on a vulnerable woman during her father's final illness, he said. You exploited grief and confusion for personal gain. You showed no remorse until you were caught. This court finds your behavior reprehensible. Derek was led away in handcuffs. He didn't look back at my mother.
Didn't say goodbye.
And just like that, he was gone. Mom called me that night. It's over, she said. She was crying, but they were the right kind of tears. Relief. Release. Yeah, I said. It's over. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for letting me. I visited the next weekend and the weekend after that. Kept my promise about standing dinner dates. Slowly, carefully, my mother and I rebuilt what had been broken between us. It wasn't perfect. There were still awkward silences, still moments when the past 8 years hung between us like fog. But we were trying. We were healing. And that was enough. The house on Elmwood Street settled into a new rhythm. Mom joined a book club, started volunteering at the library, reconnected with old friends. She painted the guest room a soft blue and told me it was mine whenever I wanted it. I took her up on that offer more often than I'd expected. Spent long weekends there, helping with the garden, sorting through Grandpa's things, listening to Mom's stories about his life. One Saturday, we found a box of old photographs in the attic. Pictures of me as a child, of Mom when she was young, of Grandpa in his prime. We spread them out on the living room floor and spent hours reminiscing. I wish I'd known him better, I said, looking at a photo of Grandpa holding me as a toddler. You did know him, Mom said. Maybe not in person these last years, but you knew who he was. You knew what he valued. That's why you came back. That's why you fought. She was right. I had known him.
And he'd known me.
Known me well enough to trust me with everything that mattered. I left that evening with the watch in my pocket and Grandpa's voice in my head. Don't let them rush you. You've got more people on your side than you think. He'd been right about that too. I wasn't alone. I'd never been alone. I'd just been too scared to see it. But I saw it now. And I wasn't going to forget it again. The watch ticked steadily against my hip as I drove home through the gathering darkness. Time moving forward, carrying me with it. Not away from the past, but through it, beyond it, toward whatever came next. He thought leaving meant I lost everything I thought. Turns out, it saved me. And coming back had saved something too. Not just my mother. Not just Grandpa's legacy. But the part of myself I'd left behind 8 years ago. The part that believed in family. In fighting for what mattered. In the possibility that broken things could heal. Time had told its truth. And the truth was that I was home. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales about family, justice, and finding your way back home.